Educate us on that. What could be some of the things that we're dealing with now physically that actually began emotionally for us years before?
That's a fantastic question, Pastor Asti. So there's a lot, right? Let's think about abuse.
Okay.
Right? And abuse, let's talk about physical abuse, sexual abuse, right? Emotional neglect, mental health issues that parents might be harboring that they are not even aware, right? So what happens is the stress that our bodies go through, be it through our loving parents who don't know that they're stressed out, right? Because they're trying to make ends meet. The best metaphor I usually give is a vehicle, right? If you're driving a vehicle and it gets, right, somebody comes and hits you, maybe it's not a write-off, but it has a dent. So whether you go to the body shop and they straighten that dent out, there's still some work, right? There's still some underlying damage, whether it's been straightened out or not.
Hey, welcome to Simple Faith. My name is Rusty George, and boy, we got a treat for you today. I don't know if you've heard of some of these words before. EMDR, mindfulness, the body keeps the score. These are all terms that are used to help us understand and resolve trauma or stress that we've picked up over our lifetime, and thus our body hangs on to it even if we think we've moved on. Today, I get to sit down with a licensed therapist that helps people be able to move past these things. And we ask her some of the questions about what is EMDR? And it's defined differently than I thought it was. So we get into that. We talk about mindfulness. We talk about where God is and all of that. So I can't wait for you to hear what she has to say. Hey, if you have not already, please subscribe to the podcast, because that's the best way for you to get brand new content every time we drop new material. And we're in for a really interesting and exciting update to the podcast starting in the brand new year. So I want to make sure that you're dialed in, because we're going to go to daily short little devotions rather than just weekly. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you sign up and you're all ready for that. But today, here's my conversation with Leah Ondiek. Leah, welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Leah Ondiek. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
All right. Well, listen, I'm grateful that you joined us. I know that we've been connected by, I think, a third party, which allowed this meeting to happen. And I'm really fascinated by the work that you do and kind of your approach to helping people. So I don't want to steal your thunder. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do, and maybe a little bit of the journey of how you got there.
All right. So I'm Leah, and first of all, I am a child of God, love Lord as my personal savior. And I am also a trained licensed professional counselor, supervisor out here in Texas. I have been doing therapy for about 17 to 18 years. As of 2025, I started out with regular talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, challenging thoughts, helping people identify underlying beliefs and switch those up. And then I noticed that with trauma, with individuals who had experienced a lot of trauma, trauma could be anything from death, leading to loss and grief, losing loved ones, car accidents, and the 9 years, sexual trauma. The body needed a little bit more than just regular talk therapy. So that's how I shifted from the talk-based approach to helping individuals to more of the somatic and EMDR, where we go and also help the body really outlive or get rid of that trauma that is held at the body space. So on a personal level, I started out as an educator, K through 12. I was a teacher, loved teaching. I think that was my parents' passion for me, and then switched into the mode of what I wanted to do, and that was therapy, really helping people with emotional needs and mental health.
Did your desire to help people in this realm and with some of their pain come from personal pain yourself and kind of what you've walked through personally?
Yeah. That's a really beautiful question. So I'll tell you this. At the beginning, I never looked at it that way. Yes, I never really looked at it that there was some pain that sort of drew me to a place of wanting to help people. That realization came further down the road, right? And when I say that is in 2008, when I graduated from TCU, right? It was at the point of I was trying to figure out where do I go, because I had this master's in counseling, and I was like, you know what? I'll go back to Kenya and hang out with my dad, right? Because that was my best friend. Though guess what? He dies.
Oh my.
He dies the same month that I graduate from Texas Christian University. So actually the death of my dad propelled me into that direction of, Leah, you got to figure it out. You don't have this best friend who's going to hold you up when things are falling apart.
Right.
And that's how I went ahead and got my, we call it mental health, qualified mental health, right? Practitioner start, and then switched and got my licensure in therapy. So I didn't look at it, and that's what I'm saying. I didn't connect the dots in 2008 that the loss of my dad propelled me to the ministry that God called me for. I was this young 20-something-year-old who thought I just needed to put food right in front of me. But that's how I got started. And that's one. I can keep you here the whole day, Rusty. Right. I also, beginning of this year too, and I switched modalities a whole lot in 2025. Something tragic happened to my kiddo when she was 6-7 years old. And she finally disclosed that to me a few months before February. And oh my goodness, that set my nervous system into this roller coaster, right? But grace of God, I was healed. I had prayer warriors, besides me. I had my faith to guide me through that process. I had Church 360, who stood in the gap for me during those times. And that's when I noticed that pain that I've been carrying as a child from the age of 7, where trauma happened to me, I had been carrying all that. I mean, I'd been carrying all that to 2025, right? So I had been carrying pain master something else up to 2025 from an event that happened in my childhood. Okay. As a 7-year-old.
I want to ask you about that right there, because this is where we tend to think, oh, something bad happened, but I'm over it. I'm done with it. And sometimes we think, well, it wasn't as bad as somebody else went through, so I don't even have a right to complain about it or have a problem with it. But I think it was the book, The Body Keeps the Score, that came out that kind of opened a lot of people's eyes to some of the physical issues we deal with are a result of traumatic things that we've processed or been through or haven't processed.
Yeah.
Educate us on that. What could be some of the things that we're dealing with now physically that actually began emotionally for us years before?
That's a fantastic question, Pastor Rossi. So there's a lot, right? Let's think about abuse.
Okay.
Right? And abuse, let's talk about physical abuse, sexual abuse, right? Emotional neglect, mental health issues that parents might be harboring that they are not even aware, right? So what happens is the stress that our bodies go through the stress that our bodies go through, be it through our loving parents who don't know that they're stressed out, right? Because they're trying to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm.
All that is transferred to this little growing body, right? But then this little growing body just keeps on going through life, not knowing that it's stress that I inherited from the outside world that I'm still carrying and operating and moving through life. The best metaphor I usually give is a vehicle, right? If you're driving a vehicle and it gets right, somebody comes and hits you. Maybe it's not a write-off, but it has a dent. So whether you go to the body shop and they straighten that dent out, there's still some work, right? There's still some underlying damage, whether it's been straightened out or not. That's the same thing with our bodies. So growing up in poverty, that's a big one for individuals, right? Growing up with parents having to work and kids left at home to fend themselves, being bullied at school, right? Verbal abuse. Sometimes teachers, unfortunately, tell kids certain things, right? So you might not only be getting it from home, you might also be getting it at school. And then with the social media world, oh my goodness, these kids of ours, I bless their hearts, right? Right, because parents sometimes are out fending for them as best as possible. Bullying doesn't just stay at school anymore.
No.
It's right. We carry that forward because they have this cell phone. So all that, and remember, this is like a little kid without a lot of internal resource and agency on their own. So that's why we say the body keeps the score, right? It's almost like a punch. I usually say it's almost like being punched, and you don't even realize that you're being punched. But as you're being punched, this emotional turbulence builds up, this mental piece builds up where anxiety begins to creep up, right? The amygdala is hyperactive. Amygdala communicates to that damaged body, and the cycle just goes on and on and on. And then we grow up into adults and we're like, okay, now let me go out in the world and face this big challenging piece called the beautiful world. But guess what? That emotional pain, that somatic, right, stuckness is that vehicle that we take into adulthood. So if we do not even know, we might be functioning, thinking we're okay. And I normally say most people are one traumatic event from losing it. Yes.
Because they're carrying around so much stuff.
Exactly.
So back to the car, it's received a number of dents and it's able to keep going, but one more hit and suddenly now the bumper falls off and the tire goes flat or whatever. Exactly. You're doing the metaphor better than me. Okay.
Yes.
So there's one way you could go with this, and that is to say everything in my life is a result of trauma. Thus, if the body keeps the score, I got a bad back. That's a result of trauma. I got a trick knee. That's a result of trauma. I've got diabetes. That's a result of trauma. What are the physical things we could see that you would say that probably could be because of trauma? Now, you've mentioned the head and the gut connection. That's a thing that's relatively new from my understanding of how, the amygdala and the way the brain works can connect the way the stomach works, and thus why many of us have ulcers and those kind of things. What are some other things that you've noticed that could be a result of trauma, that physical ailment that you deal with?
Yeah. And to help us out, let's use the word stress, because trauma, most people might not necessarily want to identify with the word trauma, right? We know it is, right? We know it is. That's what it is. So to help people out, let's use the word stress, because trauma leads to stress, right, in the body. So if we look at stress, and that's a fine line, right? Because there's also personal choice and things that people do, right, that can support healthy lifestyle, right? So there's also that piece, right?
Right. If I sit on the couch and just eat nachos 6 days a week, I can't say that's because of stress. That's why I'm struggling with my heart.
Exactly. So there's also that accountability piece, right? So I love that. Yeah. So with the stress, with what we were talking about, that vehicle being banged up and banged up, right? You get bullied, you get this verbal abuse from a parent. Maybe you got whooped. Maybe you got touched inappropriately, right? That stress keeps on building up and building up and building up. And what does that long term translate, or even short term, right? Depending on different things, inflammation in the body, right? Inflammation leads to sickness, right? And inflammation can be at the somatic body level. Inflammation can be at the mind level, right? So we over time, the stress builds up to, it can start with something mild as mild anxiety and slowly builds up, right, to psychosis, or what is it called? OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, schizophrenia, right? At the mind level, at the body level, long-term stress, inflammation in the body, right? Leads to disease, things like what? Diabetes, high blood pressure, right? Which is slash hypertension, heart disease, and the list goes on and on. So that long-term stress, and especially if it's not addressed or somebody doesn't even know, because guess what, Pastor Rusty, like I said, people are one trauma away from, right, really losing it. So sometimes people are clueless, like, oh my goodness, my body is carrying all this. And then one thing happens, and then, right, it just, right, catapults out of proportion.
Right.
So it's the inflammation that eventually leads to disease, though there's also individual responsibility to doing the right thing to help the body unleash the stress.
Okay, so the popular pushback on any kind of therapy for years was a Christian shouldn't have this. Just pray it away. You would probably tell me, I know you would, that it takes more than just that, and God uses people to be able to help those situations. Talk to the listener out there that thinks, I went through that, it was rough, everybody dealt with it. Maybe that's a teen or an adult that says, my parents got divorced, but everybody's parents got divorced. It could be somebody that grew up with multiple brothers and cousins always around, and they suffered molestation at some point and said, well, everybody felt that way or did that. And they've just tried to suppress that. Obviously, we've talked about what that can do to the body, but it may take more than just praying about it. How does God intervene through our prayers, through other people? And what would you say in those situations?
Yeah. My belief is God created each and every one of us to have a full and abundant life. Not one based on mediocrity, right? Or that I deserve less than the other person. Right? So over time, when traumatic, stressful things happen to individuals, they slowly build this subconscious belief that I don't deserve good things, right? I'm not important. I'm not good enough. And how does that translate in reality mode? You minimize what has happened to you. You give more sometimes to others than you give to yourself. And the list goes on and on. I love this Bible verse, right? It says, guard your heart above all things, guard your heart, because through it, the issues of life goes through it. I usually go another level with that. What about if you're a child who did not understand that concept of guard your heart? So what eventually happened? A lot of issues went through that heart that was created to love unconditionally, just not the other person, but self. Right? So there is a lot. God gives us peace, right? He gives us peace. And another thing that I've noticed people desire a lot is peace and the feeling of aliveness. Peace and aliveness.
It's good.
So if you're at peace with, okay, this happened to me, I don't need to do anything, and you're living to the fullest extent that God created you to be as a human being, great.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing that and you're not taking care of yourself, you're minimizing what happened to you. You're not living the best life that you're supposed to be. You're not able to show up unconditionally to yourself and to your loved ones. Then that's not why God put us on planet Earth.
Mm.
And we need to go ahead and take care of those issues that the heart went through that were not based on maybe your actions, but things that happened to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the techniques that you have started using is something that probably people have heard of. Maybe they don't understand it. It's from my understanding, it's relatively new, but it may have been around forever. And that's EMDR. So I want to let you talk about that, explain that for us. You know, we call this podcast Simple Faith. We like to make things simple. So break it down for us and tell us about the benefits to it.
Okay. All right. So yes, you're right. EMDR has not been around for a long time. It came about in 1980. It was by Francine Shapiro, a doctor, just taking a walk in a park. She sort of noticed that when she's moving her eyes left and right, the bilateral stimulation, that some of the stress that she was holding in her body sort of lightened up. So that's how EMDR came into being.
Wow. Well, first of all, let's just say this. I don't know if anybody's that aware of their body while they're just taking a walk through the park. That's pretty amazing.
Yes. And that's that's the mindfulness, right? And that's why I mixed the two, the eye movement, the EMDR, the eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing, and the mindfulness practice.
Okay.
Right? Because what is that mindfulness to? The mindfulness is, right, the minute you shift to the left, I can be like, oh, Pastor Rasti just shifted to the left. If somebody is not mindful, they might not notice even that shift in the environment.
Okay.
Right? So that's
carry on.
Okay. Right. So with the eye movement breath therapy, the reason I trained in it back in the day before COVID hit. And I was like, you know what, Leah, let's do more with this. And it does help. It helps my clients, the clients who come in for their first 2 sessions. And oh my goodness, they're like, oh my goodness, I feel alive. I feel more peace in my body. So what eye movement is that's what it is, the EMDR, eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing. So the eye movement is the bilateral stimulation, right? Back and forth. We're trying to get the left and the right brain to connect and speak the same language, right? The left and the right. Right? So that's the bilateral stimulation, right? And with the desensitization, like I said, people, because of hard places, because of stress, because of /trauma, people develop those underlying beliefs about self, like I'm not good enough, I'm not important, I don't deserve good things, I'm a failure, right? So with the bilateral stimulation, what happens is it goes into the processing unit, right, in the brain to bring up those traumatic experiences to the forefront so we can reprocess it. Because what happens when you get banged, remember that car, when it gets hit, it's a moment of stuckness, it's a moment of shock. So what happens with traumatic hard places, it's the mind and the body get stuck in that trauma narrative.
Okay.
Right. So now the idea is, okay, let's go back into that vehicle that was hit. Let's help the dent, but not just straighten out the dent. Let's go back and change the story that dent inherited as a result of that hard place. So versus the dent thinking like, oh, I'm not important, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure now because I have a dent. No. Let's go back and look at the big picture. You're a full vehicle that was driving down the road before the accident happened. You had people who loved you. You had yourself, you safeguarded yourself during that accident, right? So now we're going into the processing unit and helping that individual begin to break that chain of bondage
Wow.
with those beliefs that are formed over time as a result of the hard places.
Is it necessary to just recall the trauma or the difficult moment while you're moving your eyes right to left, or do you have to replace it at the same time?
Exactly. So it's not the trauma that we're replacing, it's the belief,
Ah, okay. Because the
right?
trauma is the event. It's the
That's the
belief you
event.
took out of that
Exactly. And how
lingers.
the Exactly. So it's the belief, right? And so, e.g., let's take somebody who's had sexual trauma as a child, right? So, sexual trauma as a child, or maybe there's promiscuity, right, as a result of that early, right, sensitization,
Sure.
right? And then over time, they're going back and forth relationships. They're like, oh my goodness, I can't stop this, right? So now we go back to that, right? Making sure that they feel safe in their body first, right? Because initially with EMDR is to ensure that somebody feels safe in the body, because we don't want somebody to go beyond their window of tolerance, right?
Wow.
So yeah, so first, the first step is stabilize the body, help the body feel safe in itself. Then now we go back to that initial trauma as a child and help that individual process that. Because what normally happens, especially with the sexual abuse, right? The child believes, oh my goodness, I was not good enough. I'm not important. I'm a failure.
Mm-hmm.
It was my fault. And the list goes on and on, right? And then this keeps on building, if it's not taken care of into adulthood and who knows what. So now we go back to that space and help that individual remember that, hey, one, you are a child. Two, bad things happen to good people. It was not your fault, right? And also look at other things, right? Like that sexual trauma happened to you. But guess what? Maybe your parent was, was away trying to fend for everybody, right? They didn't know. You were a child, you didn't know how to speak up. You didn't have this information. So we expand the information in the processing unit. And as we expand that, right, the individual begins to believe something different about themselves. And that body is like, oh my goodness, yes, I have a dent, but guess what? I can still get on the road. I can still shine. I can still be human. I can still love. I can still be loved. So we desensitize
Right.
the distorted belief and then we replace it with new appropriate beliefs that every human being on planet Earth deserves love, attention, a feeling of accomplishment, and the list goes on and on.
You've mentioned mindfulness a couple of times. I think for people that are new to that term, they just assume, oh, yeah, that's just weird. That's new age. That's getting outside your body and trying to, leave reality. Break it down for us, since you are a child of God and not just that, but a follower of Jesus. How do you perceive and define mindfulness?
So, mindfulness is the act of focusing your attention to the here and now, right? Because what happens, I could be here with you right now, but my mind might be running a million, right, tracks. So guess if that is what's happening, then I miss the beauty that you're offering here in this moment. Right. So the act of mindfulness, I get this from parents like, oh my goodness, like my parent, I want to be more present for my child. I can't be there. I'm thinking about all these trillion things that I need to do. So the act of mindfulness is allowing the person to have their mind, their body, and their spirit present in one space at the same time, giving the best to self in that moment or to the other person as best as possible. So mindfulness cooking mindfulness, right? You don't, and sometimes we think about this mindfulness like, oh, I need to go and sit in this quiet space and put this chanting music. No. That's not mindful. We can start with things that one already does. The art of cooking. Cook mindfully as you're cutting your vegetables. Have your mind, your spirit, body as you're cutting the vegetables. As you're sitting down with your kiddo, your mind there, not thinking about all those 300 events that you have
Right.
for the rest. Right? So the art of mindfulness is beautiful because God gave us a beautiful world. Right? And we're entitled to the beauty that God created out there. But how many times do people just drive and not see the beautiful full moon outside?
Right.
Or the beautiful birds singing, or that the leaves are now changing color and slowly, right, dropping. That's that art of mindfulness. Just being present, focused attention, enjoying the goodness that all of us are entitled to.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Leah, tell people where they can find you if they want help or if they'd like to learn more about this. Are you on the social channels, or is there a good website for you or email address?
Yeah, the website, yes. So yes and yes. So right now we are based in Mansfield off of East Broad Street. So that's where we are based right now, and it's Holistic Approach to Mental Health. The website is www.holisticapproachmentalhealth.net. That's the best way to contact us. And yes, we are on social media, and that's at Holistic Approach to Wellbeing. That's on Instagram. Facebook is Holistic Wellness to Mental Health, pretty much. So the website, holisticapproachmentalhealth.net, or Instagram, Holistic Approach to Wellbeing.
This has been great. I've learned a lot, and I really appreciate you helping our listeners learn a lot as well. Thank you for being part of the church. Thank you for being part of the kingdom of God and helping people advance beyond their past and their trauma to see the full life as Jesus promised us in John 10:10 that he wants all of us to have. So thanks for being on the show today, Leah.
Thank you, Pastor Rusty. Really appreciate it, and I'm honored. Have a good day.
Well, Leah, thank you so much for sharing with us. That was fantastic. It was an eye-opener for all of us. If you're looking to talk to her kind of on a professional basis and get some help with things, make sure you check her out at the different social media sites and websites that she gave to us. You might be thinking there's a friend that needs to hear this, so make sure you share this with them and that they get this content as well. And we'll be back brand new content next week. Cannot wait for you to hear that, and we'll deal with that next week. So thanks for listening, and as always, keep it simple.